Hi, I'm Jim,
And I'm Kevin,
and we are.
the Signal Brothers. Hey, folks, welcome back to another live podcast with Jim and I. We're excited to have you here watching. Today's subject is about qualified immunity. In today's subject, we'll probably stray into sovereign immunity and absolute immunity as well. And we also have some interesting topics that have happened the past 2 weeks that we'll cover, and we'll give our comments about things that have been going on in the past 2 weeks. Hey, we love to take questions during our podcast. So do me a favor. If there's something about the subjects we're covering that you want us to comment on, please type it in the chat and we'll be happy to answer them. And let us know what you're passionate about. If you're passionate about something, let's get you on the podcast as a guest. Even if your views and opinions don't necessarily align with Jim and I, we'd still love to have you on the podcast. We want that other perspective, that other point of view.
Yes.
And listen, last podcast we asked for ideas for this podcast. In the chat, somebody put qualified immunity, and we're covering it this podcast. So please go ahead, put your ideas for subjects in the chat. We'll be happy to answer them. Hey, last thing covered before we get into the subject, Jim, we're up to 109 followers on Facebook.
Outstanding. That's
So
great.
we love it.
We're
Tell your
climbing.
friends, tell your family. If you like what we're doing, please share and get the word out, right? We're doing this to have fun. We want this to be an interactive environment. We are looking for people to participate with us actively. So come on and get involved in the podcast and share it. Help us grow the podcast. Okay. Without any further ado, over to qualified immunity. Jim.
Yes. The interesting thing I want to point out before we get into the subject is this subject was it was a great suggestion. It's a great subject because it really illustrates why we're doing this. Because you hear about certain things, and I didn't really associate it with the term qualified immunity. But once I started reading, I'm like, okay, doing a little bit of research, okay. And during that research, my mind changed. And that's the kind of thing you want to see. You research something, you get into a subject, you discuss it with people, and you're like, you have one mindset. And by the time you're done with your research, you could have done a 180 on it. And I mean, that's what this kind of discussion is about. We want to, get you thinking and maybe change your mind, maybe reinforce your mind. But I kind of changed my views during my research on this. Qualified immunity. I mean, the idea on the surface makes sense. I mean, because you think that if these officials and police officers and such didn't have some sort of immunity, for lack of a better term, you'd think there'd be frivolous lawsuits all over the place, especially today with how many people are speaking out and how many people are offended at everything and how many people are protesting and actually rioting over things. You would think that the onslaught of lawsuits would be just massive if they didn't have some sort of immunity to fall back on. So on the surface, the idea makes sense. But once you do a little bit of research, you've got some serious pros and some serious cons to look into, and it can really change your mind. I actually got upset at a few stories that I read during my research. I really did. It really got emotional to me at a couple of points. So it's a serious subject.
No, I totally agree. I wasn't even familiar with the term until it was put in the chat
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks ago, Jim, and I agree with you. I have mixed feelings. I'm definitely. I think the system's broken. I
Oh
think
yeah.
the rules for immunity have to be changed. I'm just going to say that right off the bat. I mean, some of the stuff that people are getting away with just blows me away.
Oh yeah. And the way it's worded, if you read it, and you go to most places, and it reads just about the same until you get into the person's perspective of it. It is so convoluted; it almost protects itself from ever being able to be dismissed.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yes. So for those people on that are not aware, qualified immunity is a legal doctrine shields government officials from liability in civil lawsuits unless their conduct violates clearly established statutory or constitutional rights.
Yeah, and there's your
That's what we're
loophole.
talking about, right? And sovereign immunity has to do with protecting the counties and the states, governments, the governments. And absolute immunity is just exactly that, right?
Hmm.
For politicians and for government officials. It blew me away, Jim.
Yeah.
It blew me
Oh,
away.
yeah. Well, it also bears note that most of it's talking about civil lawsuits, not necessarily criminal prosecution.
100%. 100%. I pulled up a list of cases between 27 and 2019.
Hmm.
Um,
There's several
and,
of them.
and I just want to read one, right? And it has, and this is Corbett versus Vickers, 11th Circuit in 2019, and a police officer granted qualified immunity who was hunting a fugitive, ended up in the wrong house, and forced 6 children and 2 children under the age of 3 to lie on the ground at gunpoint, right? The officer tried to shoot the family dog, but missed and shot the 10-year-old child that was laying face down 18 inches away from the officer. And the court held that there was no prior case where an officer accidentally shot a child laying on the ground
Hmm.
while the officer was aiming at the dog.
And
Right? And he got qualified immunity for that.
yeah, then that's exactly it, because what you got to do is prove that exact case didn't happen that exact way in that exact jurisdiction, or you can't do it. But if you can never do it, how can you have a precedent like that?
Right. Yeah.
That's your loophole. Yeah.
And I just want to read one more because this is how crazy it is. This is Jessup versus the City of Fresno, Ninth Circuit, 2019. Qualified immunity granted for officers who stole hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash and rare coins from a person while executing a search warrant. The court held that the theft was morally reprehensible, but could find no prior case that addresses these circumstances.
Yeah.
We got to set a precedence. How is that okay?
You
How
can't set
can you
precedents.
not recover that money and those coins?
Yeah. How can you, but you can't set precedents without precedents already having been set.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy.
Yeah. The two cases that came to my mind as soon as I started reading on this is the one I have behind me, Breonna Taylor, and of course, George Floyd. And those officers were actually prosecuted. They managed to be able to get past the immunity and prosecute them. You remember Breonna Taylor, she was laying in bed asleep and was shot 8 times because they were in the wrong house.
Yeah.
And of course, everybody knows the George Floyd case.
Right.
You know, the officer kneeling on the neck and everything, and he was prosecuted, even though they proved that Floyd died of a fentanyl overdose. He was still prosecuted.
He had no reason keeping his knee on that guy's neck, right?
He didn't, but still, I mean, it's just the reason why those two come to mind is because the victim in each of these cases are so diametrically opposed. One was a law-breaking felon running from the police, and one was an innocent lady laying in her bed. Yeah. You know, and the same thing. That just goes to show you that there's a point at which it doesn't really matter what you do. You can still be a victim of something like this.
100%. And and here's the deal: is I mean, I want to protect officials that are trying to do the right thing. 100%. Right?
Absolutely.
So in the heat of the moment, the spur of the moment, this is the other side of the coin, right? Mm-hmm. You're a police officer. You're on duty. And you have to make a split-second decision to save your life, right? Mm-hmm. And it's easy, always easy to second guess, right? And so in that case, Jim, my attitude is kind of like, hey, if you can prove that they were living and doing the right thing, mm-hmm. I think it applies. But when you step out of clear boundaries, Jim, absolute clear boundaries, we got to hold people accountable. 100%.
That was some of the stories I was watching today. I was watching a bunch of stories on YouTube today. There was a case several years ago about an elderly gentleman, 75, I think 75, 77, and he was in his home, and these guys, and they had all this camera footage from the officer's own, cameras. Um, they got lost on the way to the property. They didn't know which house was which. They passed the house they were supposed to raid with the suspect in it, didn't even clear it and passed it, and then went into this man's house. And he's got a heart condition. When they shock him to death, he survived, and he's okay because he's talking on camera about it. And these guys, the moment they realized they were in the wrong house, all the cameras went off. Okay. But I mean, to protect the citizens, lawyers have had to go around, and do loopholes. I watched another story about a lady that they came in chasing a shoplifter, not even a violent criminal, a shoplifter, into her home. It was her home or her business, I can't remember, and shot it all up. I mean, they just destroyed it. And she could not win in any way. And she hired a lawyer, and you know how they won monetary damages for her? Eminent domain law. They deprived her of her property without due compensation while they took care of this business.
It's funny you should bring that up.
Wow.
Yeah, it's funny you should bring that up because there's a lady from McKinney, Texas. She had a home, right? This is falling in now into the sovereign immunity realm, right? Mm-hmm. So she had a home. She wasn't there. And the SWAT team was chasing a guy who had kidnapped a girl, right? Mm-hmm. And then he escaped and he went into this lady's, Vicky Baker's home, 81 years old. She wasn't there. They destroyed that home by, tear gas, breaking down the fence, destroyed the garage. I mean, they totally destroyed that house. And then she sued for $60,000, cost of repairs to the home. Mm-hmm. And initially, the county said, sorry, they were just doing their job. Sucks to be you, right? Insurance is not going to cover it. Why does insurance cover it? Because it was because of the government. It was government action. So the insurance is not going to cover it. So it's amazing. She got a judgment. Then it went to the appeals court, and the appeals court overruled it. Then the Supreme Court refused to take the case, right? Mm-hmm. And then a federal judge upheld the case. I mean, that's crazy to think that a fugitive goes into your home gets destroyed, and you have no recourse to recoup the money to repair your home.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like I said, when I first started talking, I get that I really think that the amount of frivolous lawsuits would skyrocket if they took that away. But, the thing is, it's been around for so long. I was reading one site and I lost it when I had to shut my computer down. The law as it stands was like 1967, but it was actually post-Civil War where it got started. And that Pearson law, the Pearson case, what was it? In 1967, Pearson versus Callahan or something in 1967. That's basically the Supreme Court ruling, and that one is basically how the law operates now. Pretty much. I mean, that's what they base it all off of now. Is that ruling? But I mean, they've been fighting this for years and years, and you hear all the time, like we were first talking about, cases like this, but I've never actually heard the term. Qualified immunity, sovereign immunity, that kind of thing. But it's like you're saying, I mean, how in the world can you take in a nation like this that's supposedly built on free and protecting the citizens and constitutionality and everything else, and have someone go in there like that? And granted, he's chasing a criminal, even if he does have the right house, and destroy your property like that with no repercussion. I mean, and the funny thing is, if you watch these cop movies and cop shows on TV, you always see the captain yelling at the guy, you destroyed 3 cars in somebody's house, and it cost us $3 million. Well, that wouldn't happen. Not without a whole bunch of trials and everything. We had to pay out so much money in settlements. Okay, well, that kind of goes against this whole, qualified immunity thing that's going on. So that's not true. Um, but it's like what I mean. The lady that I referenced a bit ago. The only reason she won is because her lawyer thought outside the box and said, let's prosecute him for compensation for I lost my word now. Eminent domain. It's the only
Yeah.
reason she got any compensation at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's crazy. The one good thing I will say, Jim, today, in today's world, not every official's wearing a body camera, but a
No.
lot of them are wearing body cameras, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's got a phone, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people have doorbell cams, right? Cameras on the outside of their house. So this is a much different world. And I really believe that this is something that has to be addressed,
Yeah. The
right?
law's not caught up to it.
Right. The law's got to catch up, right? Because again, we don't want to hinder officials from doing their job and making
Mm-hmm.
last minute decisions. I think we're absolutely clear on that. But there are people that are
Mm-hmm.
clearly crossing the line, and they should be able to be held criminally liable and civilly liable.
Well, see that goes with just about anything. When you've got a group of people that are doing the right thing, it's a good fences make good neighbors kind of thing, right? You got the people doing the right thing, and but when you got those few that will exploit, if you give them a way to exploit it, they're going to exploit the hell out of it. That
And
handful that's going to do the wrong thing now has the ability to do so with impunity. And how
so
do you?
yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
it's amazing. So another problem is that when these officials who have blatantly crossed the line, because I want to be very clear
mm-hmm,
that I am for protecting those officials that are doing the right thing
mm-hmm,
in the name of protecting, right? Then they're citizens, they're local citizens, right?
yeah,
I want to be very clear about that first.
yeah,
But
absolutely.
the ones that abuse it and then they get subpoenaed, right? Oh, I don't remember. Yeah, I'm not sure what I did, right? Oh, I don't know. I don't, those kind of answers. Yeah, they know, and that's why I think the fact that today there's body cams, doorbell
Mm-hmm.
cams, outdoor cameras, cell phones are so important today to recording what's going on.
Well, the only thing I have to say about that is there's that's a double edged sword because body cams, okay, um, doorbell cams, you got your security cameras, but when it comes to people's cell phone cameras, they'll stop and start recording when they want to, so you're not going to see the whole story, and then they can edit it afterwards, and they can, you know, it's just too easy to do that. And you've seen many cases where, you see something as it happens or right after it happens, you see this happening. But then, after public opinion has already swayed one way, oh, we got the full footage now, uncut. And it's a whole different story. I mean, you've seen that a few times. It just, I don't know. It's a double edged sword. It's just,
It is. It is. It is not clear, but I think today people are educated on what is clearly within the line of duty and
mhm.
what crosses the line.
Yeah. If
I think
you
it's
are,
I think it's and there's gray area. Let's be
yeah.
honest. There's some gray areas, right?
Hmm.
But we're talking about like some of the cases I read, right? Blatant disregard of stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars in
Oh, yeah.
money and coins
Yeah. That's not a
and no
training issue.
recourse.
That's
Come
not a
on, man.
training issue. That's not a. I mean, that is
No,
you're a thief.
that's
You're a thief
blatant.
with a badge. I mean,
Yep.
that's it. I mean, but you in a lot of these cases that aren't that blatant. I mean, you you go through training for a reason. I mean, you go in there, you should know the laws better than I do. You should know what you can and can't do better than I do. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
going to school. You would think your teacher, you would hope your teacher knows more about that subject than you do. I mean, that's the whole point.
Yeah. But not everybody gets trained as well as we think. We know that, right?
Hmm.
But there's this thing called a moral compass, right? And everybody's got one. And people know when they're crossing the line, right?
Oh yeah.
They know. Like I said, I don't want to second guess a public official that's in a situation that, heat of the moment, quick split second decision, those type of things, right? Those type of situations, I truly believe you have to err on the side of the official, right?
Hmm.
But these these corrupt things that are going on and people are being granted qualified immunity for, I just
Yeah.
don't understand. I
It's
don't
like I,
understand.
it's like I said earlier. I had to stop for a while. I was getting upset. I was
Yeah,
literally getting upset. It's just, I mean, some of that is not like your example. You just know. And the fact that my example with the guys with the house, they shut off the cameras as soon as they knew they were in the wrong place. Those cameras went off.
yeah.
It's um, and I was reading and I was watching another one, and this lawyer was talking about how he represented this guy who was driving through I think it was again, my website's down. Um, he was driving through, I think it was Wisconsin or Minnesota, and he was on his way home. Um, and he was driving through, and he had his he was a licensed gun carrier and had his permit, had his gun in the mat pocket of his door and everything, and he was driving through, and he had some error on his GPS, so he had to stop to get it straight to figure out where he was going. Well, while he was stopped, an officer saw him, pulled over, come up to him, and knocked on his window, and asked him, if everything was okay, if show me your ID and stuff, which he complied. And like you're trained in your CCR classes, you let an officer know that you have a weapon on you, and here's my permit, right? Well, now this officer tells him he needs to get out of the car. He's asking why, so she forces him out of the car. And long story short, she finds $320 in his pocket. He's got a flash drive. She finds drugs, but they found out later for his heart condition they were nitrous. Is that right?
Nitro. Yeah.
Nitro for your heart. So she arrests him, brings him in. So she's got this guy with a gun, drugs, a flash drive, and he was doing some stuff in his car she couldn't figure out. So she's got this guy. Now he's got to fight these drug charges, these gun charges. She said, and her argument when he got a lawyer, her argument with the lawyer was, well, we didn't know that carry permit was real. Okay, that opens up a lot, because how do you know that anything you hand anybody is real?
100%.
So I mean, if he has this thing and it's got the hologram on it now, this isn't 1840. It's got the hologram on it.
Okay, maybe you have that in Tennessee, but I got to tell you, in Virginia, it doesn't have a hologram on it. It's a printed piece of paper that I had to go laminate myself. So if I hand you my
Really,
CCR, you're going to look at it and go and wonder if it's real.
mine looks like my driver's license turned to the other side. It literally is. It's printed out by the same agency. In fact, mine has the exact same picture as my driver's license.
Yeah, we're not so high speed in Virginia with that. So just let me let you know that not all CCRs
Okay.
are permits are treated equally as far as the level that they go to print them.
Okay. Did not realize that, but yeah, still, I mean, she's eventually the charges get dropped and everything, but they confiscated the flash drive, and it was on the flash drive pictures of his father that had just died,
Hmm.
and it's like, now this guy's traumatized. Officer answered no consequences to this, had no consequences. It's just, I mean,
Yep.
it kind of puts in you, it, I don't say this lightly, but it's this kind of stuff that makes you understand why so many people hate police officers.
100%. 100%. And you go back to after the whole issue with George Floyd because you brought that up, right?
Hmm.
It was tough to get people to commit to being police officers, right?
Yeah. Oh
People,
yeah.
there were people that were destined to be going to law enforcement who changed direction,
Yeah.
and and rightfully so, because when you The problem is there are bad police out there. Let's be honest. There are bad government officials. There's a percentage that are going to do the wrong thing, right? And we
Hmm.
can talk about that all day long. But a majority of the folks do the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And they don't get credit for doing the right thing. And that's what, a lot of focus goes on to the abuse, and it
Hmm.
should. We should scrutinize, right, what people
Hmm.
are doing. But we don't talk about all the good things that law enforcement does, right, or government officials, right? Because it doesn't just focus on police officers, right? I mean, one of the cases that got qualified immunity was a social worker who stripped down a kid and took pictures of the kid naked. One of the articles I read
Wow.
didn't tell the mom or anything, and the
Wow.
social worker got qualified immunity.
That's a whole other can of worms
That,
right there.
that's deep, and that's deep. I mean, that could be a whole nother subject,
Yeah.
Jim, for one of our podcasts, right?
Yeah. I don't
So
I
when
don't
I
know that
read
I want to
that,
talk about that
yeah,
one.
yeah, I, I read that and I'm like, oh my god,
It's like,
right? That's
what in your brain makes you think that was okay?
and do you know how that came about? That they found out
Hmm.
when the mother talked to her child. She goes, I hope I don't ever have to see that social worker again. I don't like it when she takes off all my clothes off.
Wow.
So really, that's the stuff, right? It's such a small percentage, and maybe it's
Hmm.
bigger than we know, right? But I got to trust in my heart, Jim, that a majority of the uh, public officials, let's just use the word public officials, are doing the right thing every day,
Hmm.
right?
See, one of
I got
my
to trust
children,
in
yeah, one of my children is a social worker, and she sees scores of people every day. And I've talked to her, and she cries sometimes, and it's just like watching these people come in here trying to feed their kids is just heartbreaking.
that.
And it's just so there's many, we know it. We people may not say it enough, but the vast majority of officials are doing the right thing, or at least trying to do the right thing.
100%.
Then you got this handful that are doing stuff like this that just puts a stain on all of them,
Yeah,
and they're
yeah,
allowed to do it.
yeah. I agree. And Jim, the one thing that and we touched on this was absolute immunity, right?
Hmm.
Which is crazy because it says it's a legal doctrine that grants government officials complete protection from lawsuits,
Like
even
just
if actions performed in bad faith or malicious intent, as long as
malicious
they are
intent.
acting within the scope of their official duties.
Hmm.
Right? It's crazy to think of that.
Yeah, see, that goes back to when my wife's a big watcher of all these crime shows, right? This goes back to when you watch a judge take a judge who has the absolute immunity, take somebody that's a repeat offender, they commit a violent crime, whether it's against someone, a child or a woman or somebody that can't defend themselves against a 6.5 foot tall man. You know what I'm saying? And they're just a violent career criminal, and they sentence them to 7 years plus time served for second degree murder, knowing he'll be out in 5. And I was like, okay, that son of a gun needs to be held culpable for the next woman he murders.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And especially since anybody in law enforcement knows that violent offenders are like what, 80, 85% likely to reoffend. So let's let them out early. I've always said that they should be held culpable for the next person that gets hurt because of them. But there we go. Absolute immunity. They won't. They never have to suffer a bit. They can be completely wrong. They could intentionally.
That's the judicial immunity, right? That's one of the types of absolute immunity: judicial, prosecutorial, and
Mm-hmm.
legislative, right? Those are the three main branches of absolute authority.
Mm-hmm.
It's crazy.
It's just, I mean, like we said, the majority of them are doing the right thing, but there should be some repercussion against the ones that aren't.
100%. 100%. So, Jim, I think we've touched on this subject pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
you know, and we're going to switch into the current events stuff that's happened the past 2 weeks. And before we get into some of the other subjects, I mean, I think we got to cover, the flooding in New Mexico, uh, North Carolina, and especially in Texas, right?
Mm-hmm.
My goodness, Jim, the falsehoods that I have seen
Oh, I know.
about the floods, right? There's so much to peel back about those floods in Texas. There's so much, and we're learning new information every day.
Mm-hmm.
And there's lots of finger pointing going around about who's at fault,
Yeah.
right? And I think that fault, and we could talk about it on and on and on. I think right now the focus is finding all the victims, right?
Mm-hmm.
Helping the grieving families that lost loved ones, helping those that lost their homes, right? I mean, the focus should be helping those that are in need. That's the
Yeah.
focus. There's lots of time later to point fingers,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
blame people. But if we're going to start blaming, let's get the facts
Oh,
straight.
yeah. Yeah. And I mean, what that he who is without sin cast the first stone. We have a lot of that in government. You're going to sit there and maybe be responsible for something, and then you're going to point this finger at somebody for something that happened that they may or may not be responsible. It's just yeah. Don't talk to me. It's like if you're already going to be, you know, on the hook for what you may or may not have done in this disaster. Don't be pointing the finger at somebody else in this disaster. Let's first of all, we can examine all that later, like you said. Let's take care of business.
That's it.
Yeah.
And I've seen the blame start at the lowest level and go all the way to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
certainly have my opinions of who's culpable and responsible. I think it starts at the local level, absolutely at the local level, right? But again, this is not a time to point fingers and blame. This is time to help recover victims, right? Support grieving families, help those that lost everything. That's what we should be focused on,
It
right?
is. But
Come
have you?
together as a country,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because it doesn't matter if you're from Texas or you're from North Carolina or you're from New Mexico or California or New York. We're all Americans.
Have you heard the racial stuff being slung at it? Have you heard any of
Yeah,
that?
yeah. I'm not even going to touch it, Jim. I'm not even
It's
going to
just
touch it.
stupid. It's just
Yeah,
stupid.
yeah.
I mean, it's children. I mean, to me, in my personal opinion, the rules change when it comes to children. It's just
100%.
they're off limit. Your stupid is off limits when it comes to children. That's just
100%. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
yeah. Obviously, there's a lot to learn from this to prevent this from happening again in the future.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot to learn from this. And we gotta not only learn from it, but take action, right? A lesson learned is only learned if you take action based on what happened,
Yeah.
right? It comes up to updating weather forecast models and rainfall and the impacts of flooding area to alerting systems. I mean, there's so much that has to be done and action that needs to be taken to ensure that a tragedy like this does not happen again.
Yeah. Here we go. There's Burgermeister. Let's see if I can put this up. Corps of Engineers, by design of controlled water releases, exacerbated natural floods. Yes, they did. Back in 2010. Yeah, they delayed the because it came over with the Stones River to Percy Priest Dam, and they delayed opening that and a few other issues. And that was 2010. That was I think it was our record floods. I remember driving on the roads and getting turned around on the interstate. The police turned us around because the interstate was covered with water. We had to drive the opposite direction on that side of the freeway.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah. And but yeah, he's absolutely right. I remember that big time. One of my daughters, actually, there is Opry Mills, which is right off of Bradley Parkway, Interstate 155. It She had her prom there the night of the flood, and they rushed them all out. She said when we were coming out, they were rushing people out of the restaurant. To people, we haven't paid our bill. We don't care. Get out of here. It was that bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, but he's absolutely right. because that could have been handled a lot better. I had another friend that said he was looking at moving down here, but with our history of floods, I'm like, history of floods, dude, did you not read? It's like once in a lifetime.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good call on that. It's just, yeah, yeah, it's,
I mean,
but
between the floods we had last year from the hurricane that came through the mountains in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, to this event in Texas, New Mexico, the recent flooding in North Carolina,
mm-hmm,
right? We got to take some action, right? We talk is cheap. It's time to put your money where your mouth is and start putting the right controls in place, right? And
yeah,
we're having these 1,000-year events. Well, guess what? They're here,
yeah, I
and
mean,
we should not assume that they're not going. The next place is not going to happen, right? I
yeah,
really, really believe that, Jim.
yeah. It's like the North Carolina. If nobody knew the entire wall was going to drop, I mean, the entire we drove down it coming back to South Carolina recently, and it didn't just collapse. It's literally not there anymore. As far down as you want to look, it is literally non-existent. I've
Yeah,
never seen anything like that. And it's like that couldn't have been. There had to be some sort of warning, some sort of something in my head says there had to be something. There had to be some sort of way to notice that was happening or something. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I really can't speculate. But you know what I'm saying?
absolutely. All
Yeah.
right. What's the next current event subject you want to cover, Jim?
Oh God. How about what happened to the Epstein list? All of a sudden, it doesn't exist. It never existed. Case closed.
Well, to me, 2 weeks ago, you were talking about conspiracy theory. I think this is conspiracy. I think the
Yeah.
list is so damaging that they don't want to release it. That's just my opinion.
It's just she said she had it on her desk, and now it doesn't exist. I was
Yeah.
just talking about files. We've been talking about this for years. We even have some of the list supposedly released already. I downloaded some copies of it. Now all of a sudden the list doesn't exist. He committed suicide, case closed. Just like overnight, you woke up the next morning and there it was. Oh my God. And it's like, okay, so now we're not only looking at what we thought was the left trying to hide it, and now it looks like both sides are trying to what the heck?
Yeah.
That
It
just
must be that damaging. All I can think of, it would be that damaging to release it. That's
mm-hmm.
all I got to think. And the fact that they're playing like it doesn't exist and they think that us Americans are stupid is ridiculous,
Yeah, yeah. And I
right?
mean, it's
Absolutely
not
ridiculous. And that's why Dan Bongino's pissed off. That's
oh,
why Dan Bongino's pissed off.
he is
Why he
pissed.
may not go back.
Oh yeah,
100%.
he's about done with it. And it's not the first time we've ever seen this kind of blatant lie. They've told us to our face before that yeah, that doesn't exist. We've seen video of it, dude. We've seen this. We've seen people talk about it. Yeah, that didn't happen. What? Yeah. But the thing is, there's enough people out there to believe it without question that they'll
Yeah,
just keep
I
doing it.
I believe the list exists. I believe it is so damaging, right? It is so
Mhm.
damaging. And I'm just going to say it, right? You know who's on that list?
Hmm.
The president's on it.
Yeah, I don't think that, but I think
I
people
do.
are on it.
I do.
I don't think he's on it.
I think he's on the list. That's why it's not getting released.
If that was the case, he'd have been bitching about it long before now. But I believe enough influential people are, and maybe even in his camp, that it would cause issues.
Yeah,
But yeah. Speaking of Trump, his big beautiful bill passed.
it did.
It did, and yeah, they're having a big fit with all the American citizens losing Medicaid. Yeah, that's not happening.
Hey, Burgermeister, great point. I love your comment,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's funny you should bring that up because, I've been talking around this last couple of weeks. A friend of mine who's very liberal. Um, we have different opinions on politics, and um, there's been a falling out between us because we have different perspectives on things. But in that person's mind, what they read is the absolute God, in fact, truth. And because I don't watch the same news and I don't do research the same news sites that that person does, I am uninformed,
Hmm.
right? I don't know what's going on. And I'm doing, according to this individual, I am doing the listeners, um, I'm doing them wrong because I don't have the same point of view.
Hmm. Well, to expand on that, what kills me is how naive people like that are. Because if you search our history, the government does not have a good track record of telling us the truth, and that's
Yeah,
either side.
either side. Yep.
You know the old saying. You know how a politician's lying.
No, they're opening their mouth.
Their lips are moving. I mean, but of course, the ones on his side are telling the truth always.
Of
I don't
course.
I don't understand how you could ever get to that. They all lie. They're not there for us. They're there for themselves.
We covered that 4 weeks ago when we did the
Yeah.
Biden scandal, right? People get pissed off at Trump because he tells you like it is. You may not like it, and there's lots of things that he says that I don't like, right? But at least he tells you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the Biden camp, and go back to Clinton, you can go, we can bring up several people. They say one thing and they're doing another behind your back.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. And it happens on the Republican side too.
Oh
Let's be
yeah.
honest. I mean, Trump is right in your face and tells you like it is, but there's a lot of Republicans that are saying one thing and doing another. So,
What was that he said during the 2016 campaign? The tax laws are corrupt. How do you know they're corrupt? Because I used them.
yeah.
No
And the
BS.
reason,
Boom, right out there in your face.
and he said, right? And the reason they're not going to change is why? Hillary, because all your friends use them too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, whether you like him or not, you got to respect that in your face. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So the one big beautiful bill.
yeah.
I, listen, man. Doing these big bills goes against the conservative Republican doctrine of passing separate bills to get everything funded, right? It goes against it. So I don't know enough about the bill, Jim. It did
Yeah.
pass. They got it passed. It was partisanly passed, right? They went
Mhm.
through all the wickets to get it done,
Oh, it was.
and I'm hoping because I've done some reading since, right? And there are people that are saying there's doom and gloom that it's going to, increase the deficit, but there's also some writing out there that this is going to spur the economy and actually reduce the deficit. Time will
Mhm.
tell. Just
Well.
like just like when we talked about the tariffs, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Everybody said that the everything was going to go to hell in a handbasket with tariffs. It
Yeah.
hasn't.
No, they said inflation was going to go up. It's down. It's the lowest point in 4 years.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, that bill did not pass by a long shot. It passed in the Senate by a tiebreaker by the vice president. And what was it,
yeah,
218 to 214 in the House? It did not pass big.
yeah, yeah,
It
yeah,
squeaked by.
yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy. There's a lot in there, but I didn't think of it from that perspective. You're right. We don't like to put giant open-ended stuff like that in there. But
No,
the
because
big
how do
thing,
you read and understand everything that you're doing,
yeah,
right?
yeah. But the big thing that everybody's ragging on about it is that it's going to take Medicaid and healthcare benefits away from all these Americans. No, it isn't. It's taking it away from the people that shouldn't have had it in the first place. Because like
That
you
I
said,
agree with, right? And we're making people that can work. Those that can. Let's
and
qualify that, right?
yeah, yeah. And the thing is, and I've mentioned this here before, that's what I do for a living. I do government health care. If millions and millions of people were losing their government benefits, we'd be talking layoffs here. We'd be talking, and I'd know it already because I work Medicaid programs. So yeah.
Yeah. Jim, any other topics from the past few weeks you want to
Oh,
cover?
goodness gracious. There's just been a lot of little stuff, but those were the big ones. Those are the big ones that just boom, wake you up and smack you in the face. Yeah, but
Well, I think we've run the gamut once
yeah.
again. I'd be interested. We got our topic picked out for our next podcast, and we normally do it every 2 weeks, but due to personal conflicts, our next podcast is going to be in 3 weeks. Right, we're going to do that in 3 weeks from today, which will be August 3rd. Will be our next podcast,
Mhm.
and it's going to be on immigration, right? And in the
Alligator Alcatraz.
yeah, alligator Alcatraz. We're going to cover what's been going on with that. I think it needs to be covered, right? The perspective of what's going on with. I think it's important. I've been doing a lot of reading on it, a lot of research, and there are things going on related to this that are concerning. There's a lot of good things that have happened, but I think there's things that we can definitely improve on. So yes. So August 3rd,
Yeah.
next podcast. Well, Jim, I
Yep.
appreciate the listeners listening out there, and I appreciate the feedback
Absolutely.
that we got in the podcast. And like I said, hey,
Mhm.
folks, we want to spread the message. Tell your friends, tell your family. We're doing this because we care about this country. We want to give a balanced perspective on things that we cover, right? And again, we'd love to have somebody on here who has a different perspective and have you on here, not to attack you. We want to learn. We want to grow. So if you think differently than Jim and I, and Jim and I don't see eye to eye and everything, but I mean, Jim and I are on the conservative side. That's very clear in our podcast. But if you're interested, please come on, talk to us. We'd be happy to have you on. We'll do our research. We'll have a discussion. If you go to our Facebook page, we got 5 rules about how we operate in this podcast, right? And so we won't be attacking individuals. We'll be attacking issues. And at the end of the day, we will agree to disagree if we can't come to some middle ground. So look forward to hopefully having guests on the podcast, Jim.
Yeah, that'd be great. There's a guy I'm talking to that he's suggesting a lady, but I don't know that she's watched any of the podcasts yet. So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see. But there's some people. I have an idea or two, but I haven't reached out to him yet. We did talk about one guy that I know, Kevin, and I reached out and I did not get a reply, so he won't be joining. That's been a few weeks ago, but yeah. So, but
Well, Jim,
hope
it's that time, I think.
it is.
I'm Kevin,
I'm Jim,
and we are
the Signal Brothers.